Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Jerome Foundation's 2023 Film, Video, and Digital Production and Artist Development Grant Informational Webinar. I'm Eleanor Savage, and we're joining you today from Minnesota, Makoche, also called Minnesota. This is the homeland of the Dakota people. Today, there are 11 tribes, including 4 Dakota and 7 Anishinaabe. And Jerome Foundation honors and respects the tribal sovereignty, rights, and cultural resilience of the many Native and Indigenous peoples connected to this land, as well as the lands of the Lenape, Munsee, Canarsie, and many other tribes in what is also called New York City. So I mentioned I'm Eleanor Savage, Program Director. I'm pronoun flexible. For a visual description, I'm a white-skinned Scots-Irish person with short cropped hair, black frame glasses. I'm wearing a black shirt and a gray hoodie, and I'm in a yellow room with a window, plants, and a very busy bookshelf. I'll pass to Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andrea Brown, Grants and Program Administrator at Jerome Foundation. I use she, her pronouns. For a visual description, I'm a white-skinned woman with short, dark hair. I have black-rimmed glasses, and I'm in a gray room that kind of matches the outdoors today. I've got bookshelves behind me and a reading chair. And I'll pass along to Laura.
Hi, my name is Laura Mimosa Montez. My pronouns are she, her. I am Associate Program Officer in Minnesota for the Foundation. For a brief visual description, I am a light-skinned Puerto Rican woman with dark brown hair pulled back, and I am wearing a black fuzzy sweater. I am in a home office space with some books and art behind me, and I will welcome Melissa.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, I'm Melissa Levin. I'm also an Associate Program Officer with the Foundation. I am based in New York City. I use she, her pronouns, and for a brief visual description, I am a white-skinned Jewish woman of Eastern European descent. I have dark brown hair that's pulled back into a ponytail with bangs across my forehead. I am sitting in a room that is kind of a light pink lavender color with a gray couch behind me, as well as a plant on the other side. And I'm wearing a light blue, cozy, fuzzy sweater. And I will hand this over to Ben.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ben Cameron. I'm the president of the Jerome Foundation. I'm calling from my home office. I am a white-skinned, old, haggard, bald-headed guy who sort of looks like what if Tom Hanks and Stanley Tucci could have a child. That's what I'd look like. I'm sitting in front of bookshelves filled with CDs primarily. And because I'm having internet trouble and this keeps freezing up, I'm actually going to cut my video in hopes of getting a more secure connection. But thank you all for being here, and I will pass back to Eleanor.
Thanks, Ben. So the rest of our staff includes our finance team, which you'll see on screen here, Coretta Kendricks and Kyle Roberts.
So we have about an hour together today, and our agenda is full. We'll share a bit about our founder, Jerome Hill, and the Jerome Foundation. We'll provide an overview of both the production grant and artist development grant and discuss how they differ from each other. We'll review the eligibility requirements, walk through the application, panelist review criteria and selection process, and we'll end with a Q&A. You'll notice that your audio is muted, so to participate, you'll click on the Q&A box and type in your question. And if you'd like to ask anonymously, you can check send anonymously before you ask your question.
All right, so a little bit about the foundation history. The Jerome Foundation was established in 1964 by Jerome Hill, a filmmaker, composer, painter, and philanthropist. He started his film career by releasing 2 short films with Warner Brothers and won an Academy Award in 1957 for his documentary Albert Schweitzer. A few years later, he turned to experimental film. His works are in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art, and you can view them on our website on the founder page. The foundation has awarded grants to early career artists and arts organizations for 59 years in Minnesota, Jerome Hill's home state, and in New York City, where he spent much of his creative life.
And the values that guide our grant making are equity, diversity, innovation and risk, and humility. We center our grant making around intersectional racial equity, committing to eliminating disparities and improving access and outcomes to ensure the long-term viability of artists, culture bearers, and arts organizations in Minnesota and New York City, focusing on those whose cultural narratives and practices have been historically and presently are excluded. Our other values of diversity, innovation and risk, and humility will be discussed throughout the presentation today.
Thank you all. So Jerome Foundation has a very long commitment to supporting filmmakers. After its founding in 1964, the foundation made its first grant to an individual artist, experimental filmmaker Stan Brakhage. We currently have our film, video, and digital production program. And more recently, we've offered the artist development grant. This is a second round of that program. It came out of conversations with filmmakers and leaders in film video here in Minnesota, sharing thoughts and strategies about how best to support filmmakers in Minnesota. And the lack of support for artists for creative and technical mentorship and skill development was identified as a primary need. And this program was created to address that.
You can find the information we are covering today in the grant guidelines, which you can download from our website. Andrea will also drop a link into the chat now. Thank you, Andrea. And we'll dive in to some details. There are some differences between the production grant and the artist development grant that we want to make note of. The production grant is up to $30,000 and covers all stages of production for a film that will be in production between November 2023 and April 2025. The artist development grant is up to $10,000 for self-design mentorships with experienced directors or other film professionals to strengthen your film directing craft and or professional skills in connection with a specific film, video, or digital production project. Both programs support early career film directors who reside in the state of Minnesota and work in the genres of animation, documentary, experimental, and narrative films, or in any combination of these forms. One thing to note is that this program does not fund retroactively, so only costs incurred after the grant is awarded and a grant contract is signed will be supported. Also, individuals or co-directing teams may apply. Grants are awarded only to the directors or individual members of a co-directing team, and funds will be issued only to individuals or single member LLCs. Applications may not be submitted by fiscal sponsors, production companies, multi-member LLCs, or other organizations, including nonprofits. Also note that you may only submit one application, either as an individual or as part of a co-directing team, and co-directors will submit a single application and will share the grant funds equally.
So in the most recent round of the Minnesota Production Grant Program in 2021, 39 artists and collaborative teams applied, and 4 production grants were awarded. 2021 was the first ever round of the Minnesota Artist Development Grant, and then 10 artists applied and 4 grants were awarded. Detailed grantee demographics are in the guidelines for each program.
The applications are now open, and we will have live Q&A sessions for each program later in March, so you can drop in and ask any questions that you might have. The application deadline for both programs is Thursday, April 13th, and applications are due by 4 p.m. Central Time. You'll be notified of your status no later than October 13th, and we'll publicly announce the grantees in the fall of 2023. And grantees will be able to receive funds between November 2023 and April 2025.
So moving now to discussing eligibility. When you go to the online application and submittable, you're required to take an eligibility quiz before unlocking the application. This application will also have questions to help confirm your eligibility. This is meant to avoid an ineligible artist investing valuable time and energy in completing an application. Jerome staff is also available by appointment to answer questions and help determine eligibility. Please note that if you are applying as a co-directing team, all members of the team must meet all of the eligibility requirements. Eligibility requirements are largely the same between the two programs. We will clearly show, though, when they differ. This grant supports early career film directors with a clear ongoing commitment to filmmaking who are residents of the state of Minnesota, who have been residents for at least 1 year at time of application and plan to be residents during the span of the grant period, so through April 2025. A note that Jerome does not require citizenship, but does require residency and a social security number or ITIN number for tax purposes. Jerome Foundation expansively frames the early career spectrum as film directors with at least a 2-year track record of directing and presenting their own projects, so not first-time directors, and as well as those with no more than 10 years of experience. The Artist Development Grant is, however, designed to be of greatest benefit to directors in the 2nd to 5th year in the field, and panels will make such artists their highest priority. Age is not a factor in determining eligibility or career status. Also, the foundation recognizes that career paths can be nonlinear or disrupted along the way. The foundation additionally acknowledges that the number and types of opportunities afforded to directors may differ significantly based on discipline, race, ethnicity, class, gender, physical ability, and geography, among other factors. We also recognize that some directors may experience significant success and move past early career status well before their 10th year of practice. If you wish to discuss any aspect of your eligibility, you should take the eligibility quiz and contact Jerome staff no later than March 31st to discuss.
Another factor of eligibility is the limit on the number of feature films that you have directed. We define feature length as 50 plus minutes. For the production grant, you may not have more than 2 features. And for artist development, you may not have more than 1 feature released, screened, and in distribution. Additionally, we don't support mid-career or established film directors, which is assessed in terms of the number of years of directing experience that you have, as well as level of opportunity. For both programs, you may not be at a point in your career where you receive consistent development and production opportunities, commissions, awards, acclaim, commercial success, national or regional prizes for multiple projects. In the eligibility quiz, there is a detailed listing of awards and prizes that impact eligibility for this grant.
So to be eligible, you must have directed and completed at least 2 film projects. Qualifying films are those for which you are listed in the credits as the director, and for which you own the copyright of the production and have artistic, budgetary, and editorial control over the film. For the production grant, these can be 2 short films, 2 feature films, or a combination of 1 short and 1 feature. And for the artist development grant, these can be 2 short films or a combination of 1 short and 1 feature. Again, if you have 2 features, as just noted, for the artist development grant, you are beyond that eligibility. For both programs, one of the 2 qualifying films must be released and publicly screened, not self-presented, and not made in a degree granting program if that's applicable to you. Work that has only been screened through your own platforms or through non-curated opportunities do not meet this eligibility requirement. And film directors who are entirely self-presented and who have no additional support through grants, festivals, community or public screenings and/or competitive grants or prizes are not eligible. Moving on to the second film, the second qualifying film must be a completed film. However, it can have been made while you were in a degree granting program, again, if that's applicable to you. The application will ask you to name your 2 qualifying films along with completion dates, screening locations for the publicly presented work, and links to the film. Please note that there are certain films and samples that do not qualify here. Ineligible films and samples include commercial and industrial work, PSAs, journalism, or music videos, or any project over which the film director does not have creative control. These cannot be used to confirm eligibility, they cannot be the focus of the grant project, and they cannot be used for work samples. We do understand the creative value of this work, but because of its nature, it doesn't provide panelists with the opportunity to understand your voice and vision.
For both individual applicants and co-directing teams, you must be the directors of the proposed project. Producers, cinematographers, screenwriters, editors, actors, or interdisciplinary artists who are not also primarily film directors are not eligible. For example, choreographers making a dance film or visual artists who incorporate video as part of an installation, technology-based projects, games, or interactive work are not eligible for this grant. Individual applicants must be the sole director of the proposed film. Films created with a co-director will not count towards eligibility and may not be used as work samples. Applicants will be required to affirm sole creation of all work samples. In the case of those who are applying as co-directing applicants may not include individually created films or films co-directed with other artists not included in the application to establish eligibility. Co-directing applicants may not submit work samples directed individually or co-directed with anyone other than the co-applicant. Applicants will be required to affirm co-creation of all work samples.
And finally, eligible applicants will create new films that are innovative and/or that take creative risks in expanding, questioning, experimenting with, or reimagining artistic forms. For the production grant, your film needs to be in production between November 2023 and April 2025. And for the artist development grant, your film project needs to be in either pre-production or production between November 2023 and April 2025 to serve as the focus for mentorship activities. For the production grant, you must be complete or compliant on all reporting requirements for any direct grant received from the Jerome Foundation, including the Jerome Hill Artist Fellowship, the Jerome at Camargo program, or a previous film, video, or digital production grant. The artist development grant is a little bit different. You may not have received any direct funding from grants from the Jerome Foundation to be eligible. And please note that the eligibility quiz will ask you specifically about Jerome funding. If you have not received funding directly from Jerome Foundation in the past, you will answer that this question is not applicable to you. And again, please contact us if you have questions about this.
And applications in this program cannot be accepted from artists who are enrolled full-time, part-time, or in a low residency program in a degree granting institution at the time of application or during the grant period. Artists who are in an MFA or a PhD program must complete the program and have graduated prior to the application deadline and will be required to provide work samples outside of work created while in a degree program. You also cannot be tenured faculty or an applicant on more than one application. So you cannot apply as an individual and part of a co-directing team or part of multiple co-directing teams. You cannot apply in both the production and the artist development program. And you cannot apply with multiple projects.
Okay, moving into eligible projects. For the production program, eligible projects include new, short, episodic, or feature-length film, video, and digital production projects in any of the genres of animation, documentary, experimental, and narrative, or a combination of these forms. The foundation has no preferences for subject matter or for genre, and panels who review applications and recommend grants are asked to equally consider all genres and forms. Additionally, any budget, large or small, qualifies. Applicants are expected to demonstrate their experience and capacity for the proposed story or content or form. So if a project involves or focuses on specific people or communities, applicants will be asked to demonstrate the degree to which meaningful relationships with the film subjects and content has been developed. This program supports film directors who present work in non-traditional venues, in addition to those who screen work in movie theaters, festivals, or broadcast channels, ranging from public access to screenings within specific communities, as well as films that have online distribution and presentation.
So you'll see on screen and in the guidelines some examples of the types of expenses the foundation funds related to various stages of production. The key to keep in mind is that this is a production grant. Though all stages of production are eligible for support, this grant cannot be used to solely support pre-production, post-production, or distribution. The proposed project must be in production at some point during the grant period of November 2023 through April 2025. Funds may not be used for study and degree granting programs or commercial or promotional productions.
So we'll turn now to the eligible activities for the Artist Development Grant. This is designed to give grantees opportunities to engage in self-designed mentorship while actively working on a specific new film, video, or digital production work. This program seeks to advance the creative practice and or career development of early career film directors. Applicants must have a solid grounding in filmmaking and clearly identify the skills that they are pursuing, the strategy for achieving their mentorship goals, and the ways the mentorship will support their film work. The proposed mentorship activities must occur during the grant period of November 2023 through April 2025. And the mentorship activities may focus on all stages of production.
You'll see on screen now and in the guidelines some examples of the types of expenses the foundation funds related to artistic development. This is a grant to support mentorship activities, not a production grant. If your focus is production, consider applying for the Minnesota Film, Video, and Digital Production Grant Program. Funds may not be used for study and degree granting programs or commercial or promotional productions. If you are applying for the Artist Development Grant, you are required to have a phone conversation with Jerome staff prior to applying to ensure that the mentorship plan and budget request meets the program focus. The link to schedule that appointment is on the slide and is also available in the guidelines. Andrea has also dropped it into the chat.
So the first step to apply is to make sure that you've thoroughly read the grant guidelines for each program and decided what grant you want to apply to. You can then go to the online application. And again, you'll first be required to complete an eligibility quiz. And if you meet the basic eligibility requirements, you'll be directed into the application. If there are questions about eligibility, you'll receive a link to schedule an appointment with Jerome program staff to discuss. And remember that this discussion needs to happen no later than March 31st. For the Artist Development Grant, you'll first take the eligibility quiz and then make your required appointment to discuss your plan and budget before you complete your application. If you prefer to see the application in PDF form before getting started into the online application, you can download an application guide, and there's a link to that within the grant guidelines. You may also find it useful to use some additional resources. Links to these are also in the grant guidelines. We've got some videos with best practices for work samples and CVs. We have those live session Q&As happening later in March. There are frequently asked questions you can read. And of course, you can contact Jerome staff. And if you have specific concerns around online access, or if you have specific access requests, please contact me regarding an alternative means of applying no later than March 31st.
All right, so now moving to the application. The applications for each program are a bit different. The emphasis for the production grant is on the film project, whereas the artist development program, the focus is on your self-designed mentorship and skills development activities. After confirming your eligibility with the quiz and listing the 2 qualifying films, you'll provide work samples accompanied by additional contextual and factual information. You'll also upload a CV and respond to questions related to the review criteria and provide a budget.
Your work samples are a critical component of your application. First and foremost, you must be the director on all submitted work samples, and those work samples must be work that you have conceived and generated. We ask for Vimeo or YouTube links to the full work if possible. Trailers and rough cuts are not permitted. 2 work samples must be from completed works. 2 work samples must be from completed works, and you should not submit rough cuts or works in progress for these required work samples. And you will identify 10 minutes total across both work samples for panelists to watch. A 3rd work sample is optional for those applicants who are submitting work in progress footage only of the project they are applying with. So if you've started production on your project, we encourage you to include that work in progress sample. And for that 3rd sample, you'll identify 3 minutes for panelists to watch. So for each work sample, again, we ask for the Vimeo or YouTube link and a password if that's applicable. We also ask for a description, including the name of the work, the year it was completed, the running time, where the work has been publicly screened, and awards received and grants received that supported the project, if that's all applicable. You'll list your role or roles in the project. Again, you must be the director. You may also have other roles like editor, producer, and you'll list that here. You'll provide cue times for your work samples, keeping in mind those time limits. And please note that you can only provide 1 cue point or sequence per sample. Panelists want to see uninterrupted sequences of work in real time. So for the cue point, you would say something like start at 3 minutes and 30 seconds and end at 8 minutes. You would not, for example, say start at 1 minute and go to 1:30 and then jump to 2:45 and end at 3:45. You will also have the opportunity to give context for the work sample. Remember that people who don't know you or know your work will be looking at these cued excerpts and sequences while trying to assess the merit of your work. The notes in this context field help panelists immensely to understand the work they are looking at. You might, for example, write about how the scene you are choosing fits into the larger arc of the work, or if there are specific stylistic aspects of the work that you want panelists to pay attention to. For the in-progress work sample, you might note what work remains to be done on the project. And we do have a video available that walks through tips and guidelines for work samples, and Andrea will drop that link into the chat now.
The production grant application also asks for additional sample materials. For narrative films or hybrid films with a narrative focus, we require a script sample for the proposed project. You are asked to upload this, the film script, as a PDF. The script excerpt allows the panel to gauge the quality of the writing and assess your ability to create character, structure, rhythm, etc. If you work in narrative film but do not work from scripts and instead rely on improvised process, you must explain that process and submit an alternative to the script sample, possibly an improvisational structure or an outline. This helps the panel assess your skills in directing unscripted work. You are strongly encouraged to make sure that one of your work samples was developed through an improvised process, if this is the way that you work. If you are a film director that works from a finished script and don't have the script, you can upload a draft. And if you don't have the script or a draft, the panel will not have enough information to consider your proposal, and you should not apply. A concept, storyboard, or project outline may be provided for films in any genre, but this is not required. You have the option to upload the storyboard, outline, lookbook, or visual concept as a way to help panelists gauge how you're developing the film, the characters, structure, rhythm, the visual concept, etc.
Another part of the application is the CV. CVs must be current and complete and clearly represent your film directing experience and any related film experience. Bios and resumes are not acceptable for this application. The CV is your chance to present your background, experience, and accomplishments to the panel. You must have a section at the top of your CV that clearly lists your directed work. Do not group your directing work with your other film experience, like your editing, acting work, etc. These should be in separate sections. You need to be specific about project titles, length, year of completion, and your specific role on each film. If you're applying as a co-directing team, each individual will upload their own CV. There is a video available that walks through tips on organizing your film director's CV, and Andrew will drop that link into the chat now.
And the next element of the application will be your responses to questions, both about your proposed film project and about you as a film director. The application is organized into sections based on the review criteria that panelists use to evaluate your application. And these are artistic merit, impact, and feasibility. And we will go into detail on those criteria in just a little bit. There are suggested maximum lengths that you should abide by for each response. These won't be enforced by Submittable because we don't want you to have to rewrite things to save just a word here or there, but you are strongly suggested to operate within these recommendations. And while Submittable does save your work as you go along, you might find it helpful to draft your responses in a platform like Word, Pages, or Google Docs, and then copy and paste them in. And this way you can track your word count more easily. In addition to the questions, you'll find further instructions below the text fields in Submittable. So make sure you address all of the details when you're responding to these questions. There is one question on the application where you have the option to respond either in writing or by uploading a video. And this question is, how do you see your work as innovative, and/or what creative risks are you taking to deepen and expand film or video forms? For this question, we provide the option of video as an alternative to writing to allow you to respond in the medium in which you feel the greatest comfort in conveying to the panel a sense of who you are. If you do choose a video response, do not do an artistic video that attempts to artistically answer the questions or try to squeeze in more work samples. There is no need for high production values. We are just looking for a clean audio and video. And in fact, we encourage you to use your phone to make this recording.
So you'll also provide a budget. For the production grant, we provide a sample template in the application to give you an idea of the level of detail we are looking for and how to organize it. If you already created a budget, you may use it as long as it includes all the information that is on the example/template budget. For the artist development grant, you will fill out the table with your budget amounts for each fund area, recognizing that your total should be $10,000 or less.
So for the review process, the Jerome Foundation staff first pre-screens applications to confirm your eligibility. Applications are then reviewed by an independent panel comprised of film directors and film professionals with wide-ranging experience in Minnesota and beyond. Panels are constructed to ensure that no single race or ethnicity constitutes a majority and represents diversity in gender, age, and experience as well. A list of past panelists for this and other programs is available on our website, and I'm going to drop that into the chat as well. And panelists will identify a group of finalists to be discussed at a full day meeting, where they'll then arrive at a collective set of recommendations that are then reviewed and approved by the Jerome Foundation's Board of Directors. Feedback is only offered to finalists who have been discussed by the full panel, and finalists will be invited to set up an appointment if they so choose.
Okay, now we'll move to the review criteria that we provide to applicants and panelists to understand how the applications are evaluated. The review criteria for the production program is slightly different than the artistic development program, so we'll discuss each set separately. The criteria are artistic merit, engagement and/or impact, and feasibility. In addition, we prioritize supporting artists who share the foundation's core values, and panels are charged to recommend a cohort of grantees that captures the diversity of the field. We shared these values at the beginning of the information session. They're also posted on our website, and Andrea will drop that link in here. So the first criterion for the production grant is artistic merit. Because artistic merit can mean different things to different people, we provide a definition so that you and the panelists are working from the same definition. Artistic merit is evaluated in terms of achievement as well as potential, is the highest priority criterion. It's informed by the foundation's core value of innovation and risk. And this grant supports film directors engaged in creative risk-taking, whose work is expanding, questioning, experimenting with, or reimagining artistic forms in the ways that are described on screen here and in the guidelines. In looking at the work samples in concert with answers to application questions, the panel will assess the alignment between the aims of the work, as you express that, and how that is demonstrated in the work samples. Applicants are asked to share detailed information about the project and their cinematic and aesthetic approach to filmmaking, including the ways their work is innovative and the creative risks they are taking.
The second criteria for the production grant is the review criterion of engagement and/or impact, is inspired by the foundation's value around humility. The panelists want to understand why your project is important. They also want to understand your relationship to subject matter and/or the connection to the communities involved and the desired impact of the film. Panelists assess the potential impact of the film on the director's career, as well as the director's potential impact on the larger field or community. The panel will assess whether the director has a clear idea of the community, participants, and/or audiences for the film, and how to work in relationship with them from creation to completion of the project. The application questions on timeliness and relevance, and the applicant's self-assessment of their work and the CV are all used to assess the value of this grant for the applicant's development and career. Applicants are also asked to identify the strengths of their work and what areas need more development to further their creative work.
And the third review criterion for the production grant is feasibility. Panelists will consider the applicant's planning and process for the project as a means of assessing the feasibility, and applicants are asked to share detailed information about their role in the production, the project status and timeline, the production budget, including fundraising status and contingency plans, the creative team, and any producing partners or collaborators from the community involved, if that's applicable, and the distribution plan and goals. And panelists will assess whether the production timeline, budget, and level of planning around logistics, including but not limited to the anticipated shooting schedule, identification of a production team or collaborators, and the viability of locations and the sources of additional potential and or secured funding are appropriate for the scope of the project. And if the film director and their assembled team demonstrate capacity for completing this project as proposed.
Now we'll turn to the review criteria for the Artist Development Grant. These are impact, artistic merit, and feasibility. With the focus on mentorship, impact is a priority criterion for this program. The program also prioritizes artists who share the foundation's core values, and panels are charged to recommend a cohort of grantees that captures the diversity of the field.
To assess impact, panelists will consider the artist development goals and what the applicant wants to explore with this mentorship grant, as well as how these activities will further their work as a film director, in addition to why this is the best time for self-designed mentorship activities and the details about the mentors. Panelists also want to understand the applicant's relationship to their subject matter and or the connection to the communities involved in the project, as well as the desired impact of their work in filmmaking. Applicants are also asked to identify the strengths of their work and what areas need more development to further their creative work. Panelists assess the potential impact of the mentorship activities, how it will contribute to the artistic development and career of the director, as well as their work, and the potential aesthetic or social impact of their work on the larger fields or community.
So artistic merit, which we defined earlier, is a review criteria in this program. This is evaluated in terms of achievement as well as potential, and the definition is on screen here and in the grant guidelines.
And the third criterion is, again, feasibility, which is indicated here by the budget and information as it relates to your artist development activities and the stage of production. So panelists will assess how your goals align with your plan of activities and if the scope of artistic and or professional development activities you propose is reasonable and supported in your work samples.
Now, a little bit about the online application you'll be filling out and submittable. The application form is hopefully pretty straightforward. You'll enter in text, select options by radio button or checkbox, and upload files as needed. I did want to bring just a couple things to your attention. The red asterisks by most fields mean that it's a required field and needs to be completed before you can submit your application. If you're trying to submit and it's not working, 95% of the time, the issue is that there's a required field somewhere that's empty. At the bottom of the application, you'll see that option to save draft, which is good if you're closing out and you want to return to your application later. You'll also see that message there saying that your application has auto-saved. And when you're ready, you'll click the pink button to submit. You'll receive a confirmation message and an email letting you know that it went through. And just a final reminder about the application deadline. Applications are due by Thursday, April 13th by 4 p.m. Central Time. And late applications will not be accepted, and incomplete applications will not be considered. Once applications are submitted and the deadline closes, they may not be edited or updated. In order to troubleshoot any potential issues that may come up, internet outages or slow upload times, etc., please try to submit your application well in advance of the deadline. And remember, I'm available if you have any questions or need any assistance with the online application. We will also be in touch if there are issues with your application related to accessing your work samples. So please don't take down any links, change passwords for your video links, etc., until you've heard about your application status. And again, this will happen no later than October 13th. So I think we're ready to start with the Q&A. Again, if you have questions, click on the Q&A button in your menu. And remember to click the box to send anonymously if you want to do so. So I'm going to stop the share here and we can get started. One question related to the production grant. Can you have directed more than 2 feature films in the past that you did not write?
Well, some film directors work with screenwriters and some don't. It's more, the question is more about how many films have you directed? How many feature films have you directed that you are the sole director for, that you own the copyright for, that you have creative control of? So that's the critical question there. And if you want to talk with us to confirm that more directly, please feel free to schedule an appointment, and we're happy to look at your CV and talk to you more specifically.
Great. At the moment, we don't have any more questions in the queue. Can you submit as co-directors with someone who has assistant directed for you, or do you have to have co-directed previously?
Co-directed previously.
And when we say co-directed, you know, one thing that we'll be looking towards is in the credits of the film, who are the people listed as the directors? And so in that case, we would be looking for the people who are named as directors on the application itself.
I would highly encourage taking a look at the work sample video and the CV workshop video that the links are in the chat for. We go into very detailed information, and we also address some of the things that have tripped people up in the past with the application.
A question here clarifying what sole creative control means. What if you have directed on projects for which someone else had the final say, like an EP?
If you, yeah, executive producer, if you are the director, if you have creative control of the film, that's what we are looking for to verify. If you are hired by a producer or an organization or in a commercial situation to direct, but you don't have creative control of the film, you don't have the copyright for the film, then that would not count towards your eligibility or in terms of evaluating whether you're beyond eligibility.
No questions in the queue at the moment.
Laura, are there any questions that you've been getting regularly that you want to raise here that might be helpful to applicants?
I think I have been having calls with people who have questions around the screening requirements. So it might be the case that there's a filmmaker who has directed maybe 2 short films, and they have some questions around, you know, are there screening requirements? What are the screening requirements to be eligible?
Do you want to share those again? I know we covered them briefly.
Yeah, so I think for both the production and the development grant, there's one of the films. So we required 2 films for eligibility. Let's say it's 2 shorts. One of them has to have been released and publicly screened and not self-presented. While the other one, there are no presentation requirements around them, as I understand that. So in the case of publicly screened, it could be in a theater setting, a film setting, or it might be through a curated, juried festival that happens online. Maybe there's an invitation involved there. A public screening, what wouldn't count as a public screening is if, for example, you publish your film on Vimeo on your own and then send the link out to your friends. That would be considered self-presented.
Great,
But
thanks.
alternative spaces are also places where you can have that presentation requirement. So if you have, you know, a community screening where you've kind of been invited to show your film, that would count there.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not seeing other cues in the queue. Just a reminder though that, you know, as we do get closer to the application deadline, we'll have live Q&A sessions. Those are kind of like office hours where you can drop in and ask your question and listen to what other folks are asking about. And just to note that those are going to be separate. So we'll have one session for the production grants and then a separate session for folks that are applying for the artist development program.
Yeah, I would say in the case that if you're eligible and you are able to unlock the quiz on Submittable, it would be good well before the deadline to preview the application and note if you have questions about a work sample. That way that you have time to email or get in touch with program staff, just because those last couple weeks, especially the days leading up to that deadline, can be pretty hectic. So that would be my recommendation, is to just preview the application and then note if there are any questions you feel like you might need to follow up with program staff about.
And it's always a good idea too to use that save draft button and maybe step away for a day or two and then come back to it and sort of read things with fresh eyes. That always helps, at least in my experience, just kind of revisiting things and seeing things you may have missed before.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us today, and we wish you the best of luck with your applications, and don't hesitate to reach out to us. We want to be here to support your process.